On today's episode of the Real Estate Rainmakers podcast, we're going to be diving in to Facebook retargeting and how you can use Facebook to get impressions on all the people in your community to where they're coming to you when they're ready to buy or sell, and you are positioned as the authority in your market when it comes to real estate. Let's get going.
Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast, where we help business-minded real estate agents stop chasing leads and help them start attracting business. We don't claim to make winners here. We do claim that we help winners win bigger and faster. Building your business is building your database, one that works harder for you than you do for it. So if you want to get off the transaction treadmill, keep on listening. If you want the shortcut to dominating your market, then go to www.marketmakersystems.com/demo.
This topic, for me, to begin with, when retargeting first came out, I solely looked at it as a lead gen strategy, and I didn't like it as a lead gen strategy. So,
Right?
yeah, like with all things lead gen, I tested it, and what I found was, if people came to the site, they didn't fill out the form, they left, and I retargeted them with the same call to action. Eventually, they would click on it, then they would fill out the form, and my cost per lead was the same. And so I was like, well, what's the point of that? I would rather spend the money on, and in this case, it was mostly Google, just straight search, so that I have a larger presence in, that area of search. So I would get a higher relevancy score, and I would be able to, try to push my competitors down below, my position on Google. And that's what I found. So I just kind of ditched it, never really messed with it. But I didn't think of it as a conversion strategy.
No. And I feel like for me, when I kind of started understanding it, I went back to why it would work at different parts of the funnel and where it can be the most effective. And also, like for us internally, we ran a campaign recently that was just designed to get impressions, right? Just to get in front of people, either subconsciously or conscious. When they're scrolling through Facebook, especially, a lot of people, I don't know do you know what the stat is on how many hours a day people spend on Facebook on average of all their users?
But I know my phone with the new update, I can see, and I spend a lot of time on it. Yeah, I'm like, damn, really? I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day. How did I spend that many of them on my phone?
Right. That's what I saw that last week. I was down like 18% on my screen time, and I was pretty excited for myself. They gamified that somehow. But the amount of time that's spent on Facebook is an absurdly large amount. And sometimes people are doing it for work. Sometimes people are doing it for just like, I woke up in the morning, I need to check up on my day, see what happened while I was sleeping. And they do that. The first thing they do when they wake up, first thing they do when they go to, or last thing they do before they go to bed. And a lot of times you can just penetrate subconsciously into it to where you're starting to become everywhere, and it's this omnipresent. And I think that goes back to why you didn't like it as a lead gen strategy, because it's like it's like using part of the mystique and part of the power of it, but it's really powerful at different parts of the funnel. And internally we ran a retargeting campaign that I was just trying to get impressions for, and I was seeing how long it would show up as I was part of the group that we were retargeting. And do you know how much we spent on that campaign? You'll appreciate this.
Yeah, I think you told me it was like something small, like $10 or something.
No, 1 penny. It was a penny.
I wasn't expecting that. I do like it.
I know, right? It was unbelievable. Yeah. But it was something that we weren't really trying to get clicks on. It was just something that we were trying to get in front of people's faces. And you can when you start thinking like that and start thinking about other medias, right? Like you go
Billboard.
back, exactly. You go back 10 years, 20 years, and you didn't have Facebook. You didn't really have much of the internet presence that we have now. What did you spend money on? You spent money on billboards, which is essentially what a Facebook retargeting ad is, just digitally.
Well, and TV, they always used to charge like cost per impressions for television advertisements, and so it's not necessarily new. The difference is that the cost is so cheap and the reach is so wide. I mean, like you said, I just am in awe of the amount of time that I spend on Facebook. I really feel like sometimes I should go back to the old flip phone just to give myself a break. You know what I mean? I gave my son the
Yep.
other day one to play with, and he made me carry it last night because it was obviously Halloween and trick or treating, and um, I I really got used to playing with it. I was like, man, I could break my addiction this way. But so as far as the retargeting is concerned, I think that the problem is it's kind of confusing. Like, how do you do it? What do you retarget them with, right? Um, Getting into Facebook's ad manager and actually trying to run an ad itself is kind of daunting. It's kind of like Google's interface. You'd think with all the technology they'd make it more simple.
Right.
I don't know why they
Right.
make it so confusing and hard. It shouldn't be.
Who built it is probably the best place to start.
Engineers, yeah, we have that issue sometimes, right?
Right. Yeah.
But
Who
that's
built it?
engineers.
It
Yeah,
wasn't a user.
that's for sure. That is
Right.
absolutely for sure. Yeah. So I think that's a lot of it, and then also understanding the reason behind it. If the reason behind it is to do impressions or branded marketing, well then that's obviously a good use of the tool. Don't get me wrong, you can definitely lead gen with this strategy. I just feel like it's a complementary strategy, and I saw really an interesting slide in a slide deck, and I think it came from Woods, but he said you should always at least spend 10% of your budget on retargeting. Um, um, you know, People who you've already generated at top of funnel in order to help convert them and move them further through the funnel. And so, that's the general rule of thumb. If you're spending $500, you should spend at least 50 on retargeting.
Right. And Woods is a very big testimonial for that, because I was on one of his downpayment.org webinars months ago, and I still in my newsfeed will see interviews of him with current DPO clients talking about their experience, which is just a retargeting strategy. So let's break this down, and going back to, Michael's not with us today. He's working with one of our clients, and one thing he's been nailing down is, like, each episode we have here, like, we want to have some actionable, like, you can walk away, you got some notes that you're taking down, you can actually go and do something. So let's focus on one thing, and with retargeting, you could do it at very, very many different parts of the funnel, right? You could be doing it for your unconverted leads. You could be doing it for people heavily. The most effective would be for your people that you've talked to that are not ready to buy or sell right now, but are going to be in the next 12 months. You're going to want to stay top of mind with those people. But let's make this simple. A lot of people talk about it, and it's something that we had. It's on our blog. It was like the 4 things you must do before any listing appointment. So if you have a listing appointment, or if you have an appointment to meet with a buyer, and that appointment's been set, there is a lot of opportunity to win before you actually get there, right? So it's important to have a presentation on the listing side that's proven, and something that you can do, and it's an actual process. And same thing on the buy side, to be able to get buyer rep agreement signed. So those things are crucial. But wouldn't it be nice to be in a position where when they meet with you, it's a similar experience that they probably had with you in the Lake of the Ozarks, when they met with you. It wasn't they'd saw you on a billboard, they had seen your signs all over the place. With Jay, I always go back to one story. I think I've told it before on here, but one story that he told me that had me laughing, because he was one of the first people on the radio with real estate, where he had a little 10-minute time spot, and again, just impressions. But this speaks to the value of building authority before you actually go on an appointment. But he went on a listing appointment one time, and he sat down at the kitchen table. They started talking, and about 5 minutes into the conversation, the husband stopped him and was like, JJ, I just got to stop you. You sound exactly like you do on the radio, right? You know, like,
Yeah.
and he knew from that point, like, okay, I got to keep doing radio because listing appointments just became infinitely easier. Like, I could completely screw this up, but they already probably chose me before I walked in the door.
Yep.
So there's a way to do that with Facebook now and with retargeting. So I think we could kind of break that down of how to do it, which we've made that much easier for people with the Market Maker tool, for the how, but then the what. So what should you actually put in front of these people? So if you have an audience that's the people that you have set appointments with, or at the end of your funnel where you're trying to set an appointment with, you know that their time frame is right now, then how do you put those people into a custom audience on Facebook? And then how do I get the right ad in front of them?
Right. Yeah. So that would be the close stage for us, which would be bottom of funnel. And the right ad would definitely be testimonials. And it should be segmented by, seller, if they're a seller and it's a listing that you're going after, and buyer. And these testimonials should be talking about you being good instead of, you telling the customer you're good. And that will carry a lot of weight, and it will change kind of the paradigm, the preconception, the attitude that the client has towards you when you get into the listing appointment. And you will notice it. You will notice the way that they treat you, and you'll notice just a different level of rapport that you have, where they're listening and as you're guiding them and advising them, they're taking it into consideration. One of the hardest things in a listing is pricing, right? They think their house is worth X. The market thinks it's actually worth Y. You got to be the bearer of bad news. How do you overcome that? And for me, it would always be way after the end of the presentation, right? After they've already committed to me as the agent, and I would actually do that in the middle of the thing. I'd say, hey, price aside, since I don't determine the price, the market does. How comfortable do you feel with me as your agent at this point? Like in the middle, I'd have a little test close question, but having some rapport beforehand just makes it, like I said, infinitely easier. And so that's what I would do, and that's what I would suggest. Have some testimonials. If you don't have testimonials, which probably a lot of people who are listening are like, man, I don't. You can use track records, right? You can use percentages of things that you've done in the past that were successful. Sold this listing in 3 days for 100% of the asking price. If you don't have those, even you can swipe them from your brokerage or your company, right? If your company's track record on an MLS-wide basis has some things that are braggable, which they all do, right? The joke of a statistician is he can make whatever you want look however you want, right? There's a reason why, even though Keller Williams surpassed Remax in agent count, Remax still puts number one everywhere. Well, what are they number one in? Another category, another segment of the market, right? Every company's number one in some segment or another. And so I wouldn't say number one, because that's just watered down and pretty weak. And nobody, if everybody's number one, then nobody is. But I would specifically talk about one of those few things. And the best thing ever is a picture of a past client with a testimonial from that past client. And should I go into how to get those, how I used to get those, or
yeah, absolutely.
That dead horse. All right, so because we talk about this sometimes on our Facebook Live. The way that I always got great testimonials is I would actually write them myself. And so I would look at the transaction and I would try to pluck out some things that were good about it, So, and there's a number of things. I always like to look at the days it took to sell and the percentage price in which it sold for, because generally that's pretty strong. If you sell a house, which the average, I think in most MLSs is like 97% or in the 90s, to some extent of the average price a listing sells for, versus the asking price. So, Mike sold my house for 98.4%. An X amount of days. It's even better if they had it listed before, because then you can talk about that after having it listed for 6 months with another agent. And so I would give this to them at the closing table after they close, when they're the most happiest, right? They just got a chunk of money, or they just got out of a mortgage for, whatever purposes that they were getting out of it for. And I would say, hey, would you take a look at this? And if you agree with it, would you sign it? I said, yeah, sign it. And then I'd say, hey, can I take a picture with you? Snap a picture. and there you go. You got a brilliant testimonial. So that's the time to get them. That's the way to get them. It doesn't matter if they're a buyer or seller. On the buy side, obviously, I would talk about whatever percentage price they got off of the asking price, whatever, you know what I mean? And
Yep.
for me, it would always be a dollar amount because that's more impressive than 2-3%, right? You're talking about a
Exactly.
$300,000 house. You got 3% off, instead of Mike saved me $9,000 on the purchase of my house. Thanks, Mike. Right?
Right. Yep. And it's easy to get that, and then to create that ad, it's literally just taking that picture, copy and pasting the copy of the testimonial, and now you got an ad. And we get that it's challenging in Facebook and daunting when you get into the ad creator and you're like, right. So
Right.
we built that into our tool to do two things. One, make that process a little bit simpler, but two, be able to make your audience easier and dynamic. So as you pull people out of the stage and put
Middle of
someone
the funnel.
into a new stage, right? So you take them out and you have somebody that's a newly come in, you put them into nurture, or in this case, appointment set, then automatically the ads that you have for the
Retargeting.
bottom of the funnel. Yep.
Yep.
So this testimonial ad. The other two that I would recommend is if you have a magazine tear sheet, right? So we do this for our clients to where they can upload 3 photos. We can put you on the cover of I think Real Estate Experts Monthly or something like that today. We just take those images. You can get them printed off. You basically just pay for the shipping. It's less than $2 a copy, and you have this nice actual like magazine looking cover with a little story inside, and then a back cover with info on it on how to get in touch with you. But that's worth it. If you ordered 100 and burned 99 of them, it'd be worth it, because just getting a picture of that and then being able to hold it and use that as retargeting and use that as an image for another testimonial copy for a ad would be an amazing ad. And then the third one was the ninja trick that I was blown away the first time I saw. It's such a, like, if you saw it and you're like, that's sweet, and then you got it's not real, you'd be like, ninja trick, digital marketing, 201 maybe. But we were able to do it for a while where we were dynamically doing it in areas, so you don't have to do that, luckily, since you're just going to be concentrated on one area. But you take a billboard and you get an image of it, and you cover out the image, and then you Photoshop yourself onto that billboard with whatever you'd want your billboard to say. And now, instead of buying a billboard and going and taking a picture of it, you can just have a picture of a billboard, and now you're on it. So
yeah, and I would use that more for middle of funnel personally.
Right.
But that would, yeah.
And I think for me, I would probably have it in middle funnel, but I would also have it at the bottom funnel, and not necessarily. And this is where I think you can get a lot of free to very, 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 very low cost to retarget people with that, because there would be no call to action on it. There'd be nothing other than trying to get impressions on that, because it's not about them clicking it and finding out. I might link the thing to a blog post about how maybe a case study blog post or something like that. But I would definitely be running that as much as I could, because again, the more that they can see you, and you have the proof and testimonials, right? And they see some third party validation of who you are and what you do. And so if you said that whatever your USP is, whatever it may be, whatever you said, you're getting that validated by somebody other than you, which is good for them. But then there's some authority that happens, because when they see you on a magazine cover and they see you on a billboard, are they more impressed by you as a person? Sometimes, right? Not always. Some people kind of think that that's gaudy, maybe. But for the most part, you're going to have a positive impression on people, to where you're positioned as the expert and the authority in your market. And it's just cool, because now we don't have to go out and sign a contract for X amount of months for a billboard, and we don't have to, shoot a television commercial, because even if you wanted to do a TV commercial, I would venture to say if you had a 30-second ad that you videoed, it would be better to run a retargeting campaign on that than it would be to run on ABC.
Well, and let me tell you, shooting a television commercial is no walk in the park. I mean,
Right.
if you're going to talk, you know what I mean? It's like, you think you're ready until those hot lights get on your face, and it's like, oh man, this just got real. I'm sweating. Like, I'm forgetting my lines, and there's no teleprompter, right? Like, I had a guy with big cardboard sheets with my lines on it, and I ended up scrapping that in favor of a voiceover in a static picture because it was just so rough. And I had
Did you really?
a lot of takes. Yeah, I really did. I mean, it wasn't my first time doing that, but
Right.
yeah, people are going to make an impression of you, and if the lighting's not right, if you're sweating, shoot, I was probably hungover back then. I mean, I was licking the Ozarks in my early 20s, right? But yeah, man, it's just it's unbelievable how simple things are. I was talking to Mike the other day. He's like, man, he said all the same stuff we always did works. He said the difference is just the media. He said we don't read the newspaper, right? We read the news feed and Facebook. He said we're not watching TV as much; we're watching YouTube. And I'm like, yeah, you're 100% spot on. So this is just a really neat way to build up, your street cred, really your credibility in the mind of the consumer prior to getting in actual face to face with them in an actual appointment. So definitely, if you take anything away from this, start with some testimonials. If you've been an agent for a while, you're like, yeah, I know, I got plenty. Start retargeting your list of unconverted seller leads, and even ones that you have appointments for, because it will make a tremendous difference. And it's so cheap. They're probably not going to click on it. They're just going to look at it. Right.
Yep.
And even if they do click on it, it's just, very cost effective. The cost per click is next to nothing as well. And that just means that they're that much more engaged, right? They really wanted to see what the person was saying about you, or what's, going on in your business. And so I would say that those are worth every penny for the people that click. Another quick strategy with retargeting, we actually took Mike's entire database, which I think he had about 20,000 leads in there, and we ran a retargeting campaign. We called it the rejuvenation campaign, and it was buyer centric. And so the ad said, still searching for homes, jump on our new search site, to gain access to all homes from all real estate companies. And it was just this really cheesy image. I didn't put it together, full disclosure. Guy who looked like the neighborhood watch guy with some binoculars, right? And that was the image for the ad, and the copy was just what I said. And I think, and I have to look at the specifics, but we got the leads to come back in, create a new search, and it was like a nickel a piece. And so there were thousands of them that came back in. And so you think about a database like that, you got 20,000 old stale leads that you don't know. I mean, who are you going to call, right? Like,
yep.
Yeah. And so the people who re-engaged obviously are still in the market, still shopping, still want to be a part of your audience. And so that was a really cool strategy, and that's something that we actually suggest and help people do as well when they come onto the platform. We upload their list, and we want to retarget them with that rejuvenation campaign. And so those are just really neat hacks, really cool tips and tricks. Most of your competitors are not doing. I have not seen this personally. And I scour around looking at agents' marketing and just to see what they're doing. And so definitely not segmented by audience, definitely not segmented by timing and motivation. Those are the two key factors.
And I think the big key, and this is probably a big motivation of ours on why we started working on it, is the challenge becomes like when you start doing this. When you have leads coming in and out of your funnel on a regular basis, and you're moving your subscribers throughout this process, it becomes really hard to, every time you move it, be like, okay, well, let me export this list of people and then upload it into Facebook as my custom audience. And then 2 weeks later it switches again. And now I got to do that process all over again.
It's almost impossible, honestly.
Right. And unless you have somebody that's like insanely dedicated and they have that on their calendar every single week, and you have I mean, it would essentially be like a marketing manager or marketing assistant or something on your org chart, which not many of you are going to have, then it's just not happening, which is why we saw that. And we saw the opportunity to be able to help there because we understand the importance. We want to do it internally as much as we want to help other people do it as well. So, it's somewhat selfish sometimes when we work on some of these things because it's like, oh yeah, that's going to be amazing for us and for all of our clients too. So, you know what I mean? Like,
that's how a lot of this stuff comes about, right? We got a real challenge that we're trying to solve within sales or marketing, and we know that it's true across any industry.
exactly. And so we literally just had this roll out, and like I'm stupidly excited to be able to make the announcement to our current client base, which we should be doing pretty shortly, kind of showing them and having some training available for them on how we can do it. And then obviously helping people in getting them set up in this is going to be crucial for us. But I'm just excited because we've talked about the drag and drop pipeline, which is stupid cool and make things ridiculously simple for people. Because I think a lot of the problems with tools nowadays, because technology has gotten so advanced, you have these tools out there that do so much, right? And I think that's been something with Market Maker from the beginning. Is like it's always been able to do an insanely large amount, more than what most people could actually harness all at once, which is okay because it's like, let's focus on the things that are going to make the biggest impact in your business right away, and then we can start working the rest into it.
We built it for mega teams, right? And so then
right,
if you're an individual practitioner or a smaller team, it's like trying to fire off a rocket ship, and you got all these buttons to push. So we're like, let's just make this ridiculously easy. So if you focus on anything, focus on the drag and drop, right? Drag them from one stage to the next as you speak to them and as they reveal their timing and motivation. And the rest of it is completely automated. And so we did the same thing with this, right? Which I just realized we're favoring our podcast audience because we talk about new features before we actually tell our existing customer base, which is, I know, right? Why do we do that, Dick? Anyway, I don't know, because it's cool, because we're working on it, and when we hop on these, we're excited to talk about it. So within the pipeline, right, these different stages are named based after the methodology. So you have attract, connect, nurture, close, delight. And so the attract is top of funnel, connect and nurture is middle, and then close is bottom. Well, what we did was we created the retargeting tool so that you can literally tie whatever ad to those stages within the platform. And when you create the ad itself, it's literally drag and drop, which means that you upload the picture, you type in the message on the ad, and you choose which audience you want that ad to run for. So if they're at the top of funnel and they're in attract, they're in the middle of funnel, connect or nurture, you just choose connect, you choose nurture, or you choose close to tie that ad to that audience. And then you just set the budget. And you do it all within the platform. You literally type in the amount of money you want to spend on that audience and on that campaign and that ad, and it's just that simple. And it's we should probably show it to Facebook and see if they want to buy it, because it's something that would probably help them too.
Cool.
Right?
For sure. Yeah. And that's the key word there is simple. And that's been like my goal for a year now, is like, how can we simplify the process? Because a lot of people and agents that I see on our platform, on hundreds of other platforms, like just don't get into a good rhythm of like, they know what they need to do every single day. And it's just clear, right? So for us and in this pipeline, like, the goal for me has always been like, how can we have real estate agents wake up in the morning, log into their tool, see their tasks that are due today, and then see the messages in their mailbox. So all their emails or text messages of people that have responded to a lot of the automation, making sure that they're hitting those people, and then getting into their pipelines and having a buyer pipeline where it's like, okay, what people can I move from the left side further to the right side today? And then the seller side, what people can I move from the left side further to the right side today? And it's just a matter of keeping it that simple and knowing if you don't have, you've got a lot of people, which this is what happens. This is like the roller coaster that most all agents experience, which is as you get people close to this close stage, right, where they're getting close to closing, you've got all your attention down there, right? You're not even looking at the left side. You're not worried about how many leads you've had come in, because all you're trying to do is get those across to the closing table so you can get a check, so you can stop freaking out about the bills that are starting to stack up a little bit. So you start focusing on that, you get a good payday, and then you're like, oh crap, where are my next ones coming from? And now we go back to the left side and we're like, oh, yeah, we got to get more people to the close stage. You know what I mean? And it becomes this vicious cycle that you get on. But how can you make that streamlined process? We shouldn't make that mainstream, but a streamlined process where you have, and you start thinking of your business like a factory that has conveyor belts that are just like operational, just moving at all times, and just keep going. And you'll see kind of where you have some bottlenecks and you can solve those, but it's just going to be a process that just keeps going and going and going and going. And that's when it feels good, is when you have a, consistent, if you're doing 2 or 3 closings a month right now, meaning you're doing, 24 to 36 deals. Let's say you're doing 30 deals a year right now. More than likely, if I had to take a look at your financials, you would have spikes, right? It'd be the boom, 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 and during the good months, and then it's like it kind of trails off, and then right? But how can you make that more consistent? How can you make those ebbs and flows work out a little bit better? And it's just, I'm getting all excited here, but it's because it really the does. Sound effect. You like that? I like. It'd help if you could see my finger motion at the same time, but it's just something that can simplify things and allow you to look at your business as a whole on one screen and know exactly what's going on. And even having the dollar amounts of what's in each bucket and the potential commission in each bucket is helpful, just to be able to look at the bottom and be like, okay, I feel pretty good. I got a pretty even amount of stuff across my pipeline right now.
I was talking to a sales consultant who's a mutual friend of ours, and the guy is super smart. And he said a couple things. He said, one, the reason why there's those ups and downs is because when they get a couple of transactions piled up, they have to go and obviously maintain those transactions and see them through to the close. And so then they stop prospecting, they stop doing the things that they did to generate those, which is 100% true. And I said, well, I think the solution there is a closing coordinator or outsourcing that. But he said the other thing is, a lot of times salespeople, what they'll do is they'll set a goal for a number of sales, and they won't set a goal for the activities required in order to hit the number of sales. And he said what happens is they'll do those activities, and let's say they have a goal, he said, just for an example, of 100 widgets that they're trying to sell, and they get to the 99th, the salesperson gets to the 99th one, and he's got an appointment that day. It's the end of the month. He knows that person's a shoo-in. Well, that person dies before he gets there. And I was like, that's a pretty morbid analogy. He said, so they die before they get there. So the salesperson doesn't hit his goal. How's he feeling about not hitting his goal? Yeah, he's probably sad, the customer died, whatever. And he said, but he's feeling like he failed. And he said, if you focus on the activities that are required on a regular basis, and measure that and make that your win, whether or not the outcome is there, you can change what those activities are once you learn what the outcome is. If you didn't facilitate the goal of what you were trying to accomplish. And he said it's just a much better way of maintaining the psychology of yourself, so that you don't feel like you're losing all the time. And so as you're talking about the drag and drop and like what to do on a daily basis, I think that's the key, right? Having the consistency of being able to know what to focus on a daily basis, and whether or not you achieved that goal in order to have an impact on the bigger outcome that you're trying to accomplish. And so
yep. And that's so funny you said that, because I was just talking on a Facebook Live, I think last week, with Roy about Go for No. Have you ever read that book?
No. But I mean, when I walk past the Boy Scouts on popcorn, that's what I say. How many no's you get? Fellas? Make sure they're counting, right?
Exactly. Because there's two stories that caught my attention. This actually, I originally got somebody shared the book with me on an interview. It was somebody I didn't hire, but he brought it to the interview when I was living in California, and he brought it to the interview, and I was like, "This is a stupid book." It just looked like a little pamphlet book. I was like, "Oh, stupid," right? And then he was adamant about it. Like if in the follow-up process, like checking to see if he got the job, he asked me if I watched it, sent me a video about it, and I watched the video, and it was a story about essentially just the author was working at a store, and the bigwigs were in town, a department store. Bigwigs were in town, so he was like trying to make sure he made a good impression, didn't know when they'd be watching. So he had this guy walk in, and he was selling suits. Like he worked in the suit department, and he sold this guy like 3 suits, a bunch, like 2 or 3 different belts, 2 pairs of shoes, socks, like a bunch of ties, like 5 or 6 ties, and rang up. This is in the late 80s, and he rang it up, and it was like $3,700 or something like that, right? And he was all excited because he knew the guy was watching from the corporate office. And the corporate guy came up, and afterwards, guess what the first thing he said to him was? What did he say no to? And he said, what? And he was like, well, he just walked out of here with a bunch of stuff. So what did he say no to? And he was like, well, nothing. And he said, so why did you stop selling? And it was like for me at the time, I was like, oh, okay, like, all right, like you never know when to stop, right? That'd be like the equivalent on the real estate side. If you had a past client that was super excited and you asked them for a referral and they gave you one, and then you ask for another one and they gave you another one, right? Yeah. Or you never ask again, right? Or, they're like, oh yeah, I know this person. And then you're like, oh, is there anybody else? Yeah, I know this person. Like I would ask that question one more time until they were like, nope, nobody else, right? So there's that part of it. And then he was telling another story about how he went to was booking his own speaking events, and he would always book out like 3 months in advance. And then once he got his calendar full, he'd stop. And he was like, man, I'm not even listening to my own advice. So you know what? Today, my goal is to get 10 companies to tell me that they don't want me to speak at their events that they have coming up. And when he did that, he based it off the math that he had. But he was like, okay, so if I get 10 no's, I should have at least 3 months in advance that I'm good. When he got to his 10th one, his 10th company that said no, he had an entire year worth done,
right?
And it's just that psychology of thinking about how you can win and staying positive and being in a situation where you're feeling like you're winning no matter what you're doing. And I just had this conversation with Courtney about appointment set. So we've been doing these things in the morning where we share a commitment, and then at 4:15 at the end of the day, we get together and then we check in, have some accountability to the commitment that we made in the morning of what was going to happen. And she's been off the mark a little bit. The effort was there, but the result wasn't with how many appointments she was setting. And so this morning I was talking to her, and I was like, I think our math is just wrong, because the amount of calls we need to look at for the month of, now that it's November, the month of October, what was it how many calls did you make? And then how many appointments did you set? And what's the average? And I was telling her that I would guess that every 100 calls she makes, she set 7.2 appointments. So if it's 7.2, I need to go to Vegas because that was a complete guess. Somewhat educated, but a complete guess. But, she had that figured out. So we were going to figure that out and have the actual activity of, even if she didn't get to the end result with the appointment set in this case, we should feel good about the effort that went into it. And then it's just understanding the effort better to what result you want, right? So if she was expecting to make 100 calls and set 10 every single day, but the math tells you that you need to make 138 calls to set 10, then you need to change your activities or change your result that you expect, so you can then win.
Agreed, 100%.
So, all right, man. So I'm excited about this that we're rolling out. If you're interested, you can hit me up, Jake at marketmakerleads.com. You can send me an email. We can chat if you're wanting some help with your retargeting, or you can always go to marketmakersystems.com/demo, and we can set something up where we can actually show you how, everything we've been working on is working right now, because it is some pretty exciting stuff right now.
Absolutely.
Cool. You got anything else, my friend?
No, man, I'm ready to wrap up. I think we went a little long here, and so I always try to keep it to the time frame. Trying to stick to that 30-minute mark. So
Yes, sir.
I think we could do a whole another episode on that topic. Honestly, it's good stuff.
I got all excited on me.
I love
All
it.
right, man. Well,
as
as we say,
yep.
it's all about building a business that works harder for you
And you do for it.